Okay, welcome everybody to this monthly Cancer Vision Project tutorial. Today's topic is on German Cancer Bankpost text Fulfilling All Wishes. And maybe you have joined Khenpo Sonam Tsewang's teaching like sort of 2 weeks ago on this topic. And today it is our honor and pleasure to have Amelia Hall, one of our translators in KVP with us, and also especially big welcome to Philippe Turenne, who was a cherished KVP translation team member for a number of years as a senior translator, and he also helped a lot in the translation strategy, academic outreach, and many more things before he then started his own translation training project. So welcome both of you and welcome everybody else, of course. And before we start, let's start with prayers. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha sublime, we seek refuge until awakening. By virtue of our giving and the like, may we awaken to benefit all. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha sublime, we seek refuge until awakening. By virtue of our giving and the like, may we awaken to benefit all. In Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha sublime, we seek refuge until awakening. By virtue of giving and the like, may we awaken to benefit all. The blessing of Manjushri appearing as the emanation of Vimalamitra, the 30th rebirth of Gyaltse Laje, Pema Dongak Lingpa, holder of the 7 special transmissions, Jammen Khenpo Wangpo, to you we pray. Okay. Again, welcome everybody. So today, with us 3 that you are seeing here on the screen, we will discuss this wonderful text, Fulfilling All Wishes. I will send the link soon in our chat. And just that you know, Philip will start by speaking by the topic of speaking to Guru Rinpoche in English. Then Amelia will speak on Padmasambhava and the temporality of terma. Then Philip will discuss getting the story right, question mark. Then I will try to give a small overview over the text so that we cover every bits and pieces. And then Amelia will conclude by talking about Jammen Khenpo Wangpo's relationship to the 7-chapter prayer, because the text that we are looking at is, of course, let's say a Guru Rinpoche text. It's a Guru Yoga text, and it is very related to this famous 7-chapter prayer. So therefore, I'm very happy that Amelia is diving into that. And after each of our presentations, we will always open the floor for all of you, and so that we can discuss, So please don't feel shy, raise your virtual hand, and then let's talk. Okay, Philip, are you ready? Then I would unspotlight myself. And Amelia.
Yes, I'm ready. Okay, so hello everybody. Thanks for the invitation to this session. I'm happy to be here again. Although it's not that long ago, it feels already like a while since I kind of left being involved daily in the KVP project. I do miss this work, this kind of opportunity, so I'm very happy to be here. And thanks also, Amelia, for joining. Especially I was happy when I saw your topics, because these are things I'm also quite interested in. So to be honest, I'm not too sure exactly what I'm supposed to do for this session. But so I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the translation. And I tried to identify those 2 topics. But I believe this text we translated I think it must be 3 years ago. I think when we were about to launch the reading room, Dorma encouraged us to say, okay, let's try to get 108 texts out and launch the reading room with a kind of big bang and big quantity of text. And each of us who were translating in the project were asked, okay, try to identify a few texts you can do quickly. and that we can use for that release. And so for me, in that light, I immediately went to the kabum of Jamming Khyentse Wangpo, to the collected works, and tried to identify things that I'm more familiar with and things that I can be done quickly and easily. And my own background is very much also based in the Nyingma school. And the way I learned to practice from my teachers basically is to pray to Guru Rinpoche for his blessings. And that is basically the main practice. And the rest is sort of extra or sort of building up on that, but that's the main thing. And so this kind, when I went through and I saw this prayer, I thought, oh, that's really wonderful. Also beautiful and inspiring. So I included that. And I think that's one of the first texts I translated for the Khyentse Vision project. I have a good story also with that. I mean, for me, it was a nice story. Was that a little bit after doing the draft, I had a chance to travel to New York, to the US to meet my teacher, Khenpo Sonam Tsewang, and I requested the reading transmission, and he gave it we had a puja there, and he gave the transmission, and then he said, "Oh, I'm very happy about this text because," he said, "that my father used to practice this by reciting this very loudly." Khenpo's father is Lama Chimin Namgyal, was a very wonderful yogi and practitioner who basically his whole life was practice. His whole life was Dharma practice, and so it was very also inspiring for me to hear that as well. Now regarding the translation, for me at first I thought, oh, okay, this is all straightforward. Basic Guru Yoga. You read it once and you don't have a lot of questions. But then, as often is the case with those texts, and especially the words of Jamming Khyentse, when you actually get down to translating it, you realize, oh my gosh, this is not that easy. There's a lot of decisions. There's a lot of little things to unpack. And even though it looks kind of straightforward at first, when you start digging, and when you start discussing with other translators and other experts, you realize, oh, there's a lot of, actually, there's very many ways of understanding it, many depths of meaning, many kind of possible readings. So it was also very challenging in that sense. But at the same time, it was quite smooth. And then I think we got it done, maybe, and launched it at that time. I think so. But for me, I wanted to talk for the first topic about the challenge, especially for me, because all that process of selecting the text and translating it, because I thought it was going to be easy, was because, okay, this is the kind of material I'm quite familiar with myself. But for me, the difficult thing is I'm familiar with this kind of practice and I understand the meaning, but it's difficult for me to be satisfied with the English translation for this. And I tried to do a reflection on that, kind of think about why is that so tricky. And then I realized that, yeah, really there's two audiences at play here. I think if I were still doing like academic conference, I would find a fancy term to say a conflicting audience or something like that. Okay, when we translate, we're always asked to think about who's going to use that text, and especially at KVP, this is one of the great strengths of this project is to really think how our people are going to use it, and how to use the right, put a lot of effort into the editing with style and all of these things. So I had to think of those people on one hand, but so one audience is the people who are going to use the prayer. The second audience, though, of this text is Guru Rinpoche himself, because it's a Guru Yoga and it's a prayer. And as somebody who is involved in this kind of practice, I'm used to talking to Guru Rinpoche all the time, but usually in Tibetan, not in English. And it's not that I think that Guru Rinpoche doesn't understand English. Yeah, that's not the issue. I think it's fine. But it's just that for me, like the way I learned to talk to the practice basically is trying to connect with him, Guru Rinpoche's blessings. It's all based on the idea that the blessings of Guru Rinpoche don't have any limitations of space or time or anything like that. But the limitations to us being able to receive the blessings is our own kind of lack of devotion or pure perception, or being busy with something more important, things like that. But for me, I kind of learned to talk to Guru Rinpoche in Tibetan by using texts like, for example, 7th chapter prayer, Liub Dunma, and all the other practice that I do. Usually I do in Tibetan. It's just, I don't know how it happens to be for me. So whenever I translate in English, even though I'm satisfied with the meaning, and even though I find like, oh, the editors really helped me and we got a really good draft, still I feel this is not kind of something that I can use myself in English and I feel like I'm really connecting in the same way. So I thought that's an interesting question for me. I said, why is that? And I think probably it's not that, Tibetan is better than other languages or, for expression or connecting, but more, I thought probably the reason I don't trust kind of the English text, or I don't relate it to the English text the same way I do with the Tibetan, is that, I haven't received that kind of transmission or the example. Like I haven't learned how to practice in English, like from my teachers, the way I learned how to do in Tibetan, right? And so maybe that's why, and probably also it's just my own lack, of devotion or pure possession. But for me, that creates a quite frustrating experience. If you translate it and you do your best, and still I feel like something is missing, like something is not there. Like the reason we use this kind of text is, of course, we can pray to Guru Rinpoche all we want, but there's a feeling, there's a sense that, in general, in our culture, we would say a prayer would be more sincere if it came out of your own words or sort of your own heart, spontaneously. But in this lineage, it's not like that. I think we can be much more sincere by borrowing the words of somebody like Jameen Khyentse. Like his connection with Guru Rinpoche and his devotion is better than mine. That is more direct. He has a kind of a sense of a direct connection that I don't have. And so it's more powerful to borrow his words, borrow kind of his teachings, and through that get a better connection. So therefore, I feel like the English text is difficult for me to trust as that same capacity, that same power to connect the way his words do. And so, but of course, I realize this is not based on the language, and anything like that is probably just based on the fact that we need to establish a practice of doing that in English, and then using it also the way we learn to do it in Tibetan. Memorize it, recite it all the time, recite with different tunes, recite with different speed, recite really fast. Sometimes recite as a group, with melody. Eventually, hopefully, with the ritual instruments and things like that, musical instruments. And then eventually, I think it can take a life like that. It can become just the same. But for me, I feel like this is not yet established. So I'm very happy that that is published, and hopefully a few people got also a feeling of connection with this text and they start practicing. Then eventually it can get that life or that power. But that was kind of my reflection on uh, praying to Guru Rinpoche in English. I think maybe I'll stop here because maybe we're supposed to have a discussion or a question. But this is just the short reflection I wanted to share. Is that enough, Arne?
Of
That's too
course.
short.
This is no expectations anyway. But yeah, everybody, if anybody wants to tackle Philip and say everything in English is equally powerful or whatever, please, anybody, if you want, everybody feels welcome. But if not, then
If not, I can say
yes.
really for me how it started, like how this prayer kind of really caught my attention in the beginning was really from reading the colophon. Colophon for this prayer is very powerful, very direct. Okay, here, Khyentse Wangpo says, yeah, if you pray like this, like with devotion, there is no doubt that all obstacles will be pacified and all you wish for will be accomplished in accordance with the Dharma. Therefore, all devoted students should seek to become familiar with this practice. Okay? And of course, then we hear these things all the time, and it sounds like, oh yeah, it's kind of trying to boost our interest for this prayer. Actually, for me, as a reader, kind of in this tradition, I take that quite seriously. And this is the practice, like this is the attitude that we cultivate. That yeah, this is true. Like this, it means that literally. And if we don't kind of believe that, it's our own problem. But that is the sense in which this is kind of a practice that includes all the practices. Everything you need is here in this short text.
Okay. Thank you so much, Philip. Then, Amelia, are you ready for your part?
Yes, I'm just unmuting. Let me see. where I've got all these, I've got the text open, so I was just looking at it. So yeah, thank you for inviting me, and thank you, Philippe, for your translation. I want to say that in terms of what I do for KVP, I'm primarily an editor, although I do work as a translator. I do some translation. And I really appreciate the relationships between editors and translators in this project. It really is such a collaborative effort. And Philippe and I have worked on other things together, and I just really appreciate the back and forth and the care that goes into every time a text is published. The amount of care that goes into it is really precious. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then on this, I'm going a little bit more esoteric because as a scholar, I'm a practitioner, I'm a scholar, I'm a translator, and a lot of my scholarly interests, I practice in the Nyingma tradition, and I'm fascinated by terma. I've just been fascinated by terma from as soon as I kind of connected with the Dharma teachings, and I'm really interested in this concept of time and history, and so that's what I wanted to just have some conversation about, and in relation to this text, but in a broader sense, Padmasambhava and what I'm calling the temporality of the treasure tradition. So I want to start with a sentence from this prayer that we've been looking at, fulfilling all wishes. And there's a line in there, and it's addressed to Padmasambhava, and it says, it's about halfway down in the text, and it says, though you now reside forever on the island of Chamara with your compassionate deeds, remember especially those in Tibet. So this is a prayer that was written in 1869, and it's addressing somebody from the 8th century, over 1,000 years earlier. And this is addressing Padmasambhava residing on this island, which is, according to Buddhist cosmology, inhabited by these non-human beings, rakshasas. So the prayer and the prayer is asking him to remember and pay attention to 19th century Tibet. So this is sort of historically strange in that Padmasambhava lived over 1,000 years ago. It's geographically peculiar. The island isn't a place you can locate on an ordinary map, and it's temporally puzzling. So how can someone from the 8th century act in the 19th century? But the treasure tradition, the terma tradition, is a really different way of thinking about history, about teaching and time itself, and how those kind of operate in a Buddhist world. So, we can think of Padmasambhava as a historical figure who left texts behind, teachings behind, but also as someone who planted texts and teachings forward into futures, into like anticipated futures. So I think of treasure, I think of terma as a kind of a temporal technology. It's a way of working with time that's quite different, quite different from how we think about historical transmission. And we know, Buddhist history in Tibet, the standard narrative goes, Padmasambhava came to Tibet in the 8th century during the reign of King Chusan. He helped establish Buddhism in Tibet, subjugating demons, blessing sites, giving teachings. And then, according to the tradition, he departed, leaving for Chamara Island, where he resides and teaches. And what happened in Tibet after this? Buddhism developed through Indian commentaries and scriptures that were translated into Tibetan. Monastic institutions were founded. Lineages of teachings were established. Texts were copied and transmitted and studied. But according to the terma tradition, Padmasambhava didn't just teach while he was in Tibet. He anticipated the future. he anticipated things that wouldn't arise for centuries. So he concealed teachings, physical texts, but also teachings hidden in the mind streams, the kind of encoded in the consciousnesses and the enlightened consciousnesses of students who would be reborn centuries later as tertans, as treasure revealers. And so these teachings came with what I like to think of as time locks. They were set to be revealed when conditions were right, like exactly when needed. So I don't I don't think about terma as just necessarily a preservation of the past, but as also kind of a future-oriented deployment. Because Padmasambhava recognized that 8th century Tibet couldn't hold certain teachings. The conditions weren't right. The obstacles were too great, or the receptivity wasn't there. But he could anticipate, he could perceive that 14th century Tibet needed specific practices, or that 19th century Tibet would face particular challenges, or that practitioners in the future, in later eras, would require certain approaches. And so these teachings were transmitted across time. And what's fascinating to me from a historical perspective is that these teachings are often hidden until after difficult times, periods of persecution. For example, during the 9th and the 10th century, Tibet went through a dark age, a collapse of power, fragmentation, lineages were lost. But then there comes a later century, and that's when terma starts being revealed. And these are teachings that had been preserved through all this chaos until conditions had stabilized. Also, practices are revealed when particular obstacles arise, epidemics, invasions, social breakdown. Tertans discover specific practices designed for these situations. And so the timing isn't coincidental. According to the tradition, it's by design. The tertan, the treasure revealer, is like a temporal dharma sleeper agent whose karma and training and connection to Padmasambhava allows them to reveal or receive what was sent forward through time. So this creates like a really different relationship to the past. So the past isn't finished, it's active and participating in the present. So we have Padmasambhava, who's described in Buddhist accounts as residing in this island, which is described in Buddhist accounts as a real place, but it's not somewhere you can sail to in an ordinary boat, perhaps. And he's being invoked on the top of this the copper-colored mountain, manifesting this palace of lotus light. But what's fascinating is this prayer is asking him to remember, especially those in Tibet. So he's in one place, but he's asked to pay attention to another. So how do you pray to someone who's also somewhere else in time? The answer, I think, is in this understanding in the Vajrayana that an enlightened being isn't constrained by location in a way that we might ordinarily understand it. So this idea of this enlightened presence, it doesn't work according to the logic of being here means not being there. So it doesn't, this awakened awareness doesn't have a location in the ordinary sense. So when we visualize Padmasambhava on the crown of our head, we're recognizing where he already is, which is to say in a kind of mode of presence that transcends space. So this prayer can address him on this island, petition him regarding Tibet, and visualize him on the crown of our heads, because these are all true all at once. He's not distributed across space in a way that is constrained. And The other thing that I wanted to say that I'm also really fascinated by is that treasure literature is filled with prophecy, predictions of future treasure revealers, future events, future needs, future obstacles. And some of the times the prophecies can be quite specific, with a Turton with such and such a name, born in such a time, and they will reveal particular teachings. And these prophecies aren't so much like fortune telling, but instructions, like instructions for future agents, fulfilling a role that was prepared for them. So when Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo composes fulfilling all this prayer in 1869, he's doing two things. He's bringing forward a 14th century text that itself was revealed from the 8th century and responding to his own role, which was, according to the tradition, anticipated. So for practitioners, I think this is something really profound, because you're receiving ancient wisdom, but you're also kind of playing a role in a strategy that operates across time. So when you practice this prayer, you're doing something that from this perspective was actually anticipated. Your devotion, your practice, your potential for realization were already seen. And that's a very different feeling from studying history as something that's finished or over. It's like its history is unfolding according to an enlightened intention, and that operates on timescales that we maybe can't quite imagine. So we have this tradition that proposes that enlightened beings can plant futures that can send teachings forward through time to arrive exactly when they're needed, and can create conditions for future practice, future revelation. And so there's a lot of confidence in this, which it requires a confidence in the continuing of Dharma transmission, the assumption that there will be practitioners in the future, that lineages will survive, and that someone will be there to receive what's been sent, and confidence in the karmic connections, that students who need these teachings will have the karma to encounter them, and that treasure revealers will be born with the capacity to reveal. So I think all of this, to me, I consider myself a scholar of history. And so this is something that I'm always playing around with when I think about texts like this, is that history is what's still happening, because Padmasambhava's activity in the 8th century continues to unfold in our present moment. And so that means we're not disconnected from that. We're participating in something that was prepared for us, that includes us and anticipated us. So there's another line in this prayer, from now until we reach the heart of awakening, our protector, we have no refuge but you. And in that, there's, I think, the cultivation of some confidence that Padmasambhava's presence and teaching, they operate across time in ways that kind of transcend history as we understand it. So whether we're practicing this particular prayer today, whether today is 1869 or 1989 or 2025, we're kind of activating something that was prepared for this moment and the future. So, treasures that have been revealed so far also aren't necessarily all that's there. The tradition holds there are still things to be hidden, waiting, or time locked for future conditions. So we are in the middle of a timeline that extends centuries behind us, and according to this tradition, centuries ahead. We're not at the end of something, we're in the middle of something. So I think I'll pause there, because I realize that I don't know if this sounds like really esoteric, but it's kind of things that I think about when I look at these kinds of prayers in the terma tradition. So I'll stop and see if there's any comments or questions, or if everyone's left the room already.
I was just thinking as you were speaking, Amelia, about the fact that treasures are guarded by these treasures as well.
Yeah, yes,
Not
yeah.
only, yeah, not only do they count on us to be here to reveal and to practice, but there are these beings.
That's a great point. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so often it seems that treasures are revealed and then immediately reconcealed because the circumstances aren't right yet.
Yeah.
Or
some of them get missed.
a lot of them get missed,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
the perfect dendral, the perfect
yeah.
circumstances are not there, so they can't be revealed.
Yeah,
And so often lamas will mention that they had a share of terma wealth that didn't get
yeah,
revealed, or they had to
yeah,
pick and choose.
yeah,
There were so many.
yeah,
It's really very, very mind-blowing.
yeah, yeah. This whole practice, this whole part of the tradition, I find just incredibly compelling and fascinating. I didn't even think about the guardians of the treasure who were appointed. That's like a whole other part to think about. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
By the way, this is Heidi, one of our translators. And I
Yeah.
think, Amelia, I introduced you as a translator earlier.
Yeah, yeah, but it's fine. I mean, I am a translator. I'm just not. I'm an editor for KVP. I just don't want to. I don't want to take any glory from our amazing translators.
Amelia and I meet every week, in editorial meetings. Anyway, also great to see you, Heidi.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
If there's anybody else who wants to ask something to Amelia, otherwise we would ask Philip to continue. Okay, then Philip, get ready, please. Oh, there's something in the chat, Amelia. Maybe can you read it? And
Yeah, I agree. We have to go beyond time and space. This is understanding true Dharma. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the from the very beginning of the tradition, from the first teachings of the Buddha, is expanding our understanding of time and space is really part of building the view, I think. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Carolina.
okay, then Philip.
Yeah, thank you, Amelia. Very interesting reflections. I'd like to add maybe a comment. I mean, to maybe segue into my own little second topic. I would kind of what you said made me think that, of course, this teaching, if the story is, as you said, that Guru Machi kind of planned all of this, and maybe he's still over there in his palace in the Copper Color Mountain, is looking from afar and is saying, this one worked out, right? It's kind of an interesting idea to have. But that also implies that this teaching was not only meant for people of Tibet in the 19th century, but also people in Canada and US, Russia, and China that somehow were able to connect with that. And so even though the prayers often say, these kind of Guru Rinpoche prayer often mention, please think of us Tibetans especially. So I never really honestly felt excluded by that. And I don't have really any problem reciting that. I think for me, it just means like us, people of this time. But it also shows that the range of the kind of vision is for Dharma, is for the whole world. Is not just like Tibet or anything like that. And even like when you look at it a little bit from the outside, this kind of text, for example, again in the colophon, it says that person, that Umze from Chamdo, asked me to compose this. So I made it as a kind of condensed version covering the essential points of 7-chapter prayer. So it's much shorter than reciting this than Liu Dunma. And we know, for example, these days, when we talk about practitioners in the modern world, often they say, oh, how can I have time to recite Liu Dunma or something? I'm busy, I have to take the kids to take care or whatever. And there is a sense that they're shorter and easier and kind of more simple or essential. And so not only maybe because Tibetans at that time didn't have time, but I think between 19th century Tibet and 15th century Tibet, I don't know how different really the lifestyle was. But for people in the modern world, then yes, it is very relevant. Like it's very important that we have those kind of short kind of prayers. But also they're not just like somebody who cut parts off or summarized or I don't know, made it kind of baby version or easy version. They're like designed to have the same kind of power, but for people with kind of shorter attention span. So it is very precious, and it's very nice to think like that. And so that was one reflection I had. And the second one was that, yeah, this particular text, by the way, in KVP, since there's a sort of whole group of people who spend their whole days studying writings of Jamin Khyentse Wangpo, and all people work together, there's quite a degree of specialization. And one of the things KVP has is a list of all the names Jamin Khyentse Wangpo uses when signing works. And so we kind of learned to pay a lot of attention to that. And I just mentioned that this one is signed as Pema Oser Donga in Baswa. That is his name as Teptan. And to me, that indicates that even though he tells like, okay, somebody asked me and I composed this, that the fact that he's signed using that name indicates that in some sense, I don't know why I see only myself on the picture. That's a sign that this text almost like can be considered itself like a terma. Or also the fact that he says this is sort of condensed version of 7-chapter prayer. It gives it kind of that status or that sort of nature in my view. And like between the kabum, the sort of own works composed by Khyentse Wangpo or things he borrowed and things like that, and the kababdun, this is something that came up at KVP a lot. There's a very kind of interesting notion of authorship here. Like Khyentse Wangpo is not somebody who just writes text the way a regular person does. A lot of it is just out of his wisdom mind. They're from previous lives, as you said, like from terma. Some of it is material terma, some of it is like gong terma hidden within the mind. But even I don't think like even when it's his own composition that suddenly he becomes like an ordinary person. It's all out of his wisdom mind. And we see that with many great teachers from Tibet. With Mipam Rinpoche also, for example, it's like that. He has a lot of sadhanas and prayers, visualizations that he doesn't say, oh, I revealed from this and that. It just came out of his mind. But they're like terma. So I consider this text also like that. But that brings me to the topic I wanted to talk about in the second part, and that is trying to get it right. And all you said, Amelia, I think is a really good introduction to this topic because there are so many teachings that are revealed, and sometimes with text like this, it's a very simple point that you're trying to clarify, and it leads to considering a lot of big, difficult to answer questions. Like for example, in the very first line of this text, talks about all appearances, everything that appears is the realm of lotus light. So that's easy to translate, yeah. Everything is the realm of lotus light. Actually, this question also came last week in the KVP discussion. They say, okay, exactly what is the realm of lotus light? And then exactly where is the copper-colored mountain? And what kind of place is that exactly? And also the question came from about the name of one pure land called Pema Drawa, lotus net. Sometimes called Ogmin Pema Drawa, the Akanishta lotus net. And then people ask, oh, what exactly is Pema O? You know, is it a pure land? Is it a palace? Is it a place? And then you realize that actually, when you try to get the story straight, it's very difficult to find exactly what it is. Because depending on which terma you're looking at, it's not talked about in the same way. And there are different versions of the story. In the basic description you get, for example, of the place where Guru Mache is residing, for example, if you follow the presentation in Leugdunma. Leugdunma, I think a lot of you are familiar with. Those of you who are not that familiar, there's a chapter of Leugdunma. It's like a guided tour of the copper-colored mountain. So first they talk about the island, and on top of the island is the mountain. On top of the mountain is the palace. Okay, so the island is called Sanskrit Chamara, Tibetan Maya. And the mountain is called Sangdokpari, the copper-colored mountain. On top of the mountain is Pema, the palace, a lotus light. And then you go inside the palace. Inside the palace is Guru Mache. Yeah? And so that's the basic version. So then, but here Pemao is not a palace, it's a Xing, which is usually the name we use for Pure Land. Xing means like field or Buddha realm. So now we're saying, okay, what is it? But then actually when you hear the description of the palace Pemao, it is described as, yeah, immeasurable kind of palace. Right? It's not like a small, even though it's on top of the mountain, it is itself kind of quite vast. Like there's no limit to the space inside it. So it leads us again to those questions about space and time and things that don't really work. But when you're translating a text like this, you're trying to get it right. Right? You don't you want to get the meaning. But when you try to clarify the meaning, you realize it's kind of inconceivable. Or like it doesn't make sense conceptually to our dualistic mind. And also then you say, okay, I cannot like grasp all of that perfectly, but at least I'll try to respect, the way it's explained. And then even if you compare with other terma, they'll say something else. And that applies also to the life story of Guru Mache. Like I say, Guru Mache has so many emanations and so many live for so long. Like it's really hard to get a straight story. And the different termas also give different accounts. Like it doesn't follow always the same process, the same names. Sometimes it seems to do things that other Mahasiddhas did. So maybe borrow. I don't know. It's very difficult to figure it out. And then, but this one is kind of easier because in the end it does mention, okay, this is kind of based on Leugdunma, the 7-chapter prayer. And Leugdunma is quite well known. So I'd say, oh, okay, at least I can, if I'm not sure, I can try to stick with what Leugdunma says. But then the problem is, even in Leugdunma, it's not that easy, not that clear. Like, for example, the land of Guru Mache, right? For example, in that prayer to Yeshim Tsogya, which is like the tour of pure land of Guru Mache, is quite clear. You go and then even like it's almost like you go inside, like come there, you land, you go in. It's really nice. But in the other chapter, the prayer given to Dorjin Dunjom, which is the biographic chapter of the 7-line prayer, then in the beginning it says it locates on the Chamara, that continent in the southwest, southwest, Sindhu, the ocean where Guru Mache is born. Okay. Now, usually we hear that this Sindhu lake is in Uddiyana, right? And there he was born. But now he's born in Chamara, in that same prayer. And so is he born there in the beginning, or is he there now because he moved there after he did all this in Tibet? It's not clear. And some prayers also, they say, Guru Mache, look at us from your place in Uddiyana, as if he's now staying in Urje. So there's also a conflation of Chamara and Uddiyana. And then, of course, we're like, I don't know what to do. It's difficult to figure it out. And then we have great teachers like, for example, Samjit Jalal Mache identified the place where Guru Mache is born. This Sindhu place, there's one short text that explains, really nice. In actually one place in India today, called Ujjain. Right? He said, this is Ujjain. And then some people also follow these instructions, like you can check this Nekor project that writes a kind of pilgrimage guide for sites associated with Guru Mache. There's some place in Gujarat, they identified the delta of the river there. Indus River, I think, is probably where Guru Mache was born. I think based also on the instructions of great Master Chadar Mache. So it's really quite puzzling And so here I find that there's a kind of tension between trying to be a good translator, like that does a good job getting it right, but also trying to respect the fact that the text is kind of like doesn't seem to provide a clear answer. And you can't just cross, like in regular kind of historical or philological work, we would cross-reference other sources and say, okay, it seems to be referring to that. And actually it's not really possible. And so even as a translator, you're kind of obliged to accept some degree of limitless or inconceivable meaning to the text, which is kind of nice in a way, because you're like, wow, okay, this is special. But then, like, what do you choose? Like, what do you go for in the text? Because I don't have that kind of confidence that I can just write something. It would be inconceivable, but people, would be awakened with. For me, it would just like, if it comes out of my mind, it's just kind of gibberish. Okay, so it's really quite interesting situation. And it came also another text we're working actually with Amelia, and there it's a similar text by Khenpo Sonam, but I think it's the one he composed when he was young. It's not like this one. I mean, it's similar, but not exactly. And there's a line that we really can't figure out. We talked to all our colleagues, our translators, our experts. It refers to the story of Guru Rinpoche before being born as Guru Rinpoche. He was the Buddha Shakyamuni. And then he was reborn, sometimes some texts say 4 years later or 8 years later, in order to reveal the Vajrayana teachings as Guru Rinpoche. But there it says, abandoning his crown behind, you took birth in the Sindhu Ocean. And we're trying to understand, what does that mean, like leaving the crown behind? So one hand, it could mean like he ejected from the top knot of the Shakyamuni and kind of reborn there 8 years later. On one interpretation was, this refers to the life of Shakyamuni himself, who was a king, prince before. That seems like to be kind of jumping steps in the story. So it's also really kind of funny. I still don't feel like I understand what that is. And then if you look at the other stories, also they don't mention. So anyway, you kind of have to be satisfied a little bit with not being able to answer all the questions, and still do your best to use something that could be read with the same various possibilities that you have in the Tibetan, so keep it ambiguous in a similar way as the text is in Tibetan. But for me, that's a little bit a frustrating aspect of that. But then, of course, as we use the text, in our practice, in our own prayers, and it's not really at that moment we're not really thinking about that too much. Yeah, the main point is these same passages become like reminders that this is not just a physical place you can go and that's just your regular reality. In order to pray to Guru Rinpoche, you have to approach also that perspective of things not fitting your expectations, your concepts. Our concept and our views make things quite limited, especially these days. We have a lot of kind of things like materialistic views and things like that. So it is very important to keep it in some sense like that, but it's really a challenge for translators. And also like of even this idea, because that's one point you mentioned, Amelia. I think that Guru Rinpoche is in the past, but actually not really. He's still alive. Yeah? I mean, alive, I don't know is the word, but he's alive for sure, but not like a physical body. And so he is in the present also, and that is the challenge for us. Is we think of Guru Rinpoche as far away in time and space. He himself said, "No, I'm right here." But that's difficult for us, I think, to trust. So I think that's why those prayers are very special. And Khenpo Sonam also really, through his kind of kindness, he really kind of allows it by using his words to cultivate that feeling of closeness with Guru Rinpoche, that he's here and he kind of sees us. It's a little bit kind of maybe creepy in the beginning, you feel like, or anyway, like, but I agree, it's quite good to think like that. Like, but for me, that's one of the benefits of this prayer. But for Khenpo Sonam, he doesn't have doubt about that. Like, he's not challenged the way we are, right? Time and space, and being so attached to those views that we think, he's here, but actually, whatever, we come with some kind of explanation. And so that's why that's what we mean, I think, by there's so great blessings with those words. And it's really worthwhile, like taking time, reciting them, memorizing, practicing, because what you get is you try to slowly build that same relation of being comfortable with the fact that, yeah, Guru Maharaj is right here and the blessings are there and that you don't need anything else really. And if you're okay with that, you can be satisfied and fulfilling all wishes. It sounds like we hear this all the time, yeah, fulfilling all wishes. Actually, no, it means that. Like if you develop that, and also in the prayer, that's it. Everything is taken care of. Okay, I think I stopped now because I'm talking a lot. But that was my idea, topic of getting right.
Thank you, Philippe.
ID, yes.
Yes.
ID has a hand up.
I just was thinking about the fact that now I'm blanking on what I was going to say. Wait. All right, come back to me.
Should I? Yes.
Issue of the fact that he signed the text Pemoso Donga Lingpa as their name, but that it was a composition requested by someone.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that it was a condensation of the 7-chapter prayer, which was revealed by Nyangral Nyimawasar, who was one of Jamgon Tsewang's previous lifetimes, revealed as a treasure. So maybe he considered it just an extension of that treasure.
Ah, interesting. I didn't think that the Liu Dharma was revealed by Nyangren. Usually we say it's Tuku Sampo Takpa, who passed to Jamsen, but I think Nyangren was also definitely part of the transmission in the beginning. But even more than that, Khenpo Wangpo was Chisang Devtsen, so he received Liu Dharma live, first time. And therefore, he can give that, I think, to us directly, come back and teach. I think it's even more important, I think, than Nyangren for me. But maybe also there's a younger version of Philippe Turenne, I don't know, like that. But yeah, definitely, Khenpo Wangpo is like that. He can bring back terma to life, and that's a lot of what the Rinchen Temso and Kababdun is. Yeah, somehow he has that capacity. So yeah, this is very special. Thank you for that.
Kara, you wanted to say something?
Yes. One thing is that I looked at the Leudunma, and it doesn't seem to mention the copper-colored mountain and Chamaralanka the way, for example, Jigme-Lingpa's prayer to be reborn on the copper-colored mountain does. And I'd like to thank you for teaching on the benefits of praying to Padmasambhava, because Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche said it's his main practice, and I often wondered about that, simply reciting the Vajraguru mantra. And my question is why it's the Vajraguru mantra that's in this profound Guru Yoga, and not, say, the Tutrangsa mantra, Oma Hung Ben the Guru Pima Tutrangsa Ben Sama Yunsa Siddhipala Hung.
Oh, thank you. That's true. I heard. I mean, there's a story also about Jamin Khenpo Wangpo himself. That one time he talked to Jamgon Control and he said, "Yeah, this is my main prayer, my main practice also, the Guru Yoga, the outer Guru Yoga of Nokchen." And so very similarly, I think many great masters end up doing very simple prayer to Guru Maharaj as the most essential practice. But why there is one mantra as opposed to the other, I really cannot say for myself. In Liu Dharma itself, we don't find the 12-syllable mantra. But most people, like most monasteries, for example, they will add, they recite it, maybe between chapters or different sections of recitation, because it seems to go very naturally together with it. But why here it shows this one as opposed to the Tutreng mantra, I really cannot say. That's, I think, much way above my pay grade and capacity to understand. But it is a Guru Yoga text, and most of the time, the Guru Yoga and Nyamasco, they use 12-syllable mantra. Like requesting the siddhis or requesting the blessings or initiations. Maybe that's why.
Because I'd very much like to understand the difference between Padmasambhava and Padma Turenne.
Oh, I think, yeah. That's an
The
interesting topic.
question is for all three of you.
I think it's the same person, no? And there's so many emanations, but that is exactly we think of Padmasambhava, like for example here, this text talk, especially the beautiful prayer at the end, addresses directly Guru Rinpoche as Pimamjung, lotus born, short for Pimamjungni, which is really Padmakara, I think in Sanskrit. Pimamjungni is Padmakara. Yeah. So we think of this Pimamjungni as the kind of general name for Guru Rinpoche, or the way he's known in Tibet. When he comes to Tibet, he comes as Lopun Pimamjungni. And even like in the Tengyur, for example, his signs and works are attributed to him under that name. But if you look on the wider picture, this is only one of his emanations. What he did in Tibet, he also did in this land of Rakshasas and different parts of India. And in the stories, we find that he also converted and liberated whole kingdoms of India, like Saho and Udayana and different parts of time. And so we are biased towards the Tibetan history as something that being more important. But really, all his emanations do that. And actually, when you read more in the text, he's right now also doing the same thing in countless worlds all over the samsara in the same way. And so, yeah, it's just maybe the one we're more connected with.
Anybody else? Okay, doesn't look like. Then, merci beaucoup, Philippe. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Then I will try briefly to go through the text, even though I think all the main points have been covered already. So this is the long title, or the full title, Fulfilling All Wishes. I think Philip just mentioned a lot what that means. I guess in our context here, we can also say that we realize that we are Guru Rinpoche. And so it's a prayer to the embodiment of all refuges. So yeah, because Guru Rinpoche here is embodying all the three kayas, all the three jewels, the three roots, and every enlightened being. And therefore, as Philip was also mentioning in Colophon, it's also said, yeah, that this practice, fulfills all wishes, because it's the embodiment or the essence of all practices. So that is the long title. I show this on my PDF because I made some notes, that for me always help to know what is happening where, Then there's also the short title, Fulfilling All Wishes. And so the first section is about visualizing Guru Rinpoche, not creating, that was wrong, but remembering the purity of everything. And I guess since Jameken Tsewang starts here with Emma Ho, I feel everything that Amelia said is leading to that, right? Like this, wow, like Guru Rinpoche is beyond time, is beyond place, is beyond being there or even beyond being here, is beyond being outside of me or inside. But yeah, that's just the nature of all of us, and then maybe with that understanding, then yeah, there's nothing else to say then gosh or wow, Emma Ho. So I will read through the text and then footnote a little bit. So here it says, everything that appears is the realm of lotus light, right? Philip was just mentioning that. A perfectly amazing and boundless display. again, you know, we drop our impure perception of everything, but we understand that actually everything is pure, but usually we don't have the eyes to see that. In front of us, in the middle of a cloud of pleasing offerings, sitting upon a lion throne, lotus, sun, and moon seat, is our root guru, the precious one from Odhiyana. Right? As Philippe said, that is like the classical location. You know? If you want to find a location out there, then that is, many scholars agree on that. That Guru Rinpoche was born there, like Padmakara, lotus born, on that lake. He has a rosy white complexion, and he bears the major and minor marks of a Buddha. 16 years old, blazing with 100 peaceful and wrathful expressions. Yeah, that was also already mentioned, right? Let's say Guru Rinpoche is like the default setting, but then, yeah, he can manifest, you know, in all so many various ways, you know, wherever he is needed, you know, or she also, you know, and in whatever way, whenever. So again, it's beyond place, beyond time, but it's according to the need and the receptibility, I don't know, of beings, you know. If we have enough merit and enough purification, let's say, and maybe also enough devotion, then Guru Rinpoche is there, you know, at our doorsteps, in whatever expression and manifestation. But here, he holds a vajra in his right hand, and his left vase in us, and his left a vase in a skull. His secret consort hidden as a trident resting in his left arm, and he is adorned with a lotus head mirror and vulture's feather. He wears a secret gown, dharma robes, and brocade cloak. His legs folded in the vajra posture, he sits with an orb of rainbow light appearing yet empty. So that is what we visualize or what we feel. We feel Guru Rinpoche's presence. Yeah, and I think Amelia and Philippe said that already. I mean, Guru Rinpoche is present, you know. Isn't there a saying like 1,000 Buddhas are on each atom, something like that? But yeah, usually we don't see that. We are not aware of that. And here, these first lines, I think they help us to be aware of Guru Rinpoche's presence, and that everything is not so gloomy or dark or dualistic like how we usually perceive it. But it is Guru Rinpoche. It is the pure land of Guru Rinpoche. And then there is a praise to Guru Rinpoche. And yeah, it starts here from the beginning. The commitment being has been inseparable from the wisdom being. Yeah, so from the beginning, of course, means beginning this time. It's, again, beyond a beginning. It is beyond time. It has always been there. As the great embodiment of all Vidyadharas and Gurus, right, that we have in the longer title. Guru Rinpoche is the embodiment of all sources of refuge. His Vajrabadi is the crown of all Sanghas. His speech is rain of the blessed Dharma and ocean of the Pitakas. His mind is the wisdom of the Buddhas, of the 10 directions and their children. So body, speech, and mind are just pure, are just perfect. Of course, that is like we are praising Guru Rinpoche, but every prayer in Vajrayana, we always have to understand we're actually praising our own Buddha nature, you know, our own true nature. So that is us, you know. His qualities fulfill all needs and desires like a wealthy deity. His awakened activity leads the assembly of Dakinis and Dhammapalas. Essence of all refuges, he is radiant with light. Yeah, again, he's the essence, the embodiment of all refuges. The embodiment of gurus, dakinis, dhammapalas, world deities, everyone. So it's like really like a good package deal, basically. And then comes this quite famous 7-branch practice. Of course, it's a different wording here, but the idea. And I think it's really I think that is one of the, underrated practices in Buddhism, like bodhicitta also, and seven branch practices also. They are not estimated enough, I feel, because they're easy to understand. And then maybe it's also then easy to think, yeah, I got it, and we move on, but I think it's always good to, dwell a little bit also on the seven branch practice. It starts by knowing or visualizing that all sentient beings are there, filling the entire space with all beings that fill the space. We bow. So here we make prostrations. So the point is, the seven branch practice is, to accumulate merit and, of course, also wisdom. And by that, we make our mind more like workable, or we create the right mental atmosphere, for really like seeing that our true nature is Guru Rinpoche. And therefore, the seven branches basically remove seven problems that we have, or seven obscurations that would hinder us to see that our true nature is Guru Rinpoche. So the first one is our egoistic pride, that we do our prostrations, to cultivate more humbleness, and that sort of is reducing our arrogance, our normal pride, and is opening us up to who we really are. And then we and all sentient beings are making offerings to you with our three doors full of devotion. Another problem that we have, we are super stingy. We have this, we always are like a hamster, like collecting stuff, not really ready to share anything, only if we don't need it, So that tendency is overcome here. Then, number 3, we confess all faults. And why do we have faults? Of course, basically because our mind is functioning in a very dualistic way. But here the main problem usually is our aversion, that we always get irritated and have aggression, even with like micro-aggressive, but there's very easily something what we are fearing or what we feel as threatening, and then we have those kind of reactions. And then these irritations, then they lead to full-blown angers and hatreds and aggressions, and they lead them to all the negative actions, that harm ourselves and others, and these faults we are confessing. And of course, they also lead to downfalls, that we don't keep what we have promised. So that is also what we are confessing. And then next one, we are rejoicing in virtue. That, I guess, is also tackling an important cloud that we have in our mind that is hindering us to see our true nature, which is our constant competitiveness. We want to be Rinpoche's darling, maybe, or we want to be the best, or we want to be seen, and we are jealous if others get more or invited there or whatever. So that jealousy, that competitiveness is tackled here by rejoicing in whatever others did good, are doing good, or will do positively. Next one, number 5. This is basically addressing our ignorance, of not knowing exactly what to do, and therefore, creating so much more causes for future confusions and suffering, even though we want to be free of them. So ignorance is addressed here, and for that we request Guru Rinpoche to turn to remain, it's actually wrong views more here, and turning the wheel of Dharma, that is more the ignorance. But anyway, they go very hand in hand, so we request Guru Rinpoche to teach, to guide us, to dispel the ignorance through his teachings, and then yeah, remain as long as possible with us, so that we have a longer benefit, let's say. And the last one is dedication, that usually addresses our doubts, that we don't really know what is really the consequence of what we are doing. And so we are creating some certainty by dedicating all the positiveness, that we have created through these 6 and all our practices. We dedicate that to supreme awakening or Padmasambhava-hood, to that aim. And then there follows a supplication according to the 7th chapter prayer, and Amelia will go into that more, so I will just read it. But yeah, no surprise, fervent devotion from our heart is definitely a key here. Think of us, and again, think of us, yeah. Of course, we're not telling Guru Rinpoche what to do, right? That would be not so cool. But I think Khenpo Rinpoche once, I think it was 1999 here in Germany, he was more saying this khe, it's not really that we're asking him to think of us, but it's again more that we know that he knows, that kind of idea. So we remember, or we make ourselves aware that, yeah, Guru Rinpoche knows. So we're not making him think of us because he is doing that already, but we are reminding ourselves of his presence. Think of us as we pray with fervent devotion and pour on us a great shower of blessings, Lord Guru, precious one from Odhyana, at one with a 3-foot body, emperor of the infinite 3 roots. Though you now reside forever on the island of Tamara, yeah, we talked about that. With your compassionate deeds, remember especially those in Tibet. We also talked about that. You are the supreme Lord of the lineage gurus of the 3 times who displayed your inconceivable life in this land of Jambudvipa, sort of here, not only Germany. And your body, speech, mind, qualities, and actions are marvelous. By the way, these headings, they're just for my reference. I mean, they're not in the text, and they're definitely not waterproof, but just to have a general idea, So then there's a praise to Guru Rinpoche, especially his qualities, until we reach his state, because that is the aim at the end, And yeah, it's not a journey from now to later and from A to B, from now to something different, but it's more from A to A, that we really understand, yeah, we have been Guru Rinpoche since beginning this time, and that is much more us than what we usually think we are. We pray to you one-pointedly with intense longing. We offer our body and wealth without a second thought. From now until we reach the heart of awakening, our protector, we have no refuge but you. Please hold us and never part from us, lotus-born. Plagues, famines, wars, and conflicts afflict the whole world. Dispel the decline of this degenerated era, lotus-born. Make rains timely, make harvests and herds thrive, and grant us the splendor of bliss and happiness, lotus-born. So basically, all the ordinary, like the worldly benefits, but also the supramundane benefits and cities we are asking for. Make the Supreme Dharma teachers remain present for 100 eons, and the enlightened activity increase, lotus-born. Make the splendor of the Sanghas and the teachings of explanation and practice cover the 3 planes, lotus-born. Pacify our obstacles, increase our vitality and merit, and accomplish our every wish, lotus-born. Ultimately, may you lead everyone we meet without exception to the pure land, lotus-born. Again, that could be just our mind. By perfecting the accumulations and purifying obscuration on the swift path of the great secret, grant us the supreme city, lotus-born. Throughout all the bardo stages, now and in the future, whatever happens, happy or sad, virtuous or faulty, good or bad, our root guru, great one from Odhyana, think of us. Bless us that all our wishes are accomplished in accordance with the Dharma. So these are like the prayers, and then we are reciting the Vajraguru mantra, or Maham Vajraguru Padma Siddhi Hum. Philippe already mentioned that a little bit. And then we make sure that we are not clinging, not getting too attached. So therefore there's a dissolution and then also a heartfelt request coming up. Guru of Odhyana, by the light rays of your three secrets, purify obscurations from our mind stream, granting us empowerment and siddhis. Without ever parting, remain forever upon a lotus above our heads and grant us the auspicious fulfillment of all wishes for benefit and happiness. Again, we are sort of asking Guru Rinpoche not to leave, and that is of course good, but we could also understand it by that we actually ask ourselves to remember that Guru Rinpoche is never leaving. And then there's a concluding advice. It's of course part of the colophon, the one that Philip was mentioning earlier that he likes so much and that inspired him to translate this text. If at all times and in all circumstances, visualizing the precious one from Odhyana, remaining on top of your head without ever parting, you pray not only with your mouth, but with fervent devotion while reciting these words. There's no doubt that all obstacles will be pacified and all you wish for will be accomplished in accordance with the Dharma. Therefore, all devoted students should seek to become familiar with this practice. And then, that is how the text was requested. The Omse of Shamdo, Khenpo Sonam Tsewang, who is expert in the ocean-like way of the arts, accompanying his request with divine flowers, conveyed the need for such a prayer to the only refuge of the teachings and beings of this degenerated period, the precious one from Odhyana. Therefore, on the 10th day of the just the 5th month of the white earth snake, year of the 15th cycle, 1869, I, a follower of the lotus-born Padma Ösodonga, designed this work as a guru connected with the main points of the 7th chapter prayer. May these words of prayer bring virtue and happiness. Yeah, here we find the tattoo name, right? That we talked about already. It means Jamlan Khenpo Wangpo in his role of being a tattoo. That's it. Just, it's a very short overview over the text. If you have any questions, please raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, we have one more topic, which Amelia will cover. Okay, Amelia, I will spotlight you.
I don't know how long we're going for. I'll try and keep it brief. I don't know what the time frame was for this, if people need to leave, or I can.
Yeah, I actually saw the announcement. It was like 90 minutes, so we have 12 more minutes.
Oh, we've got time. Okay, good. Okay. I just wanted to, how quickly do I go? What do I say?
No. Quality, whatever you want to share, please share.
In this time-poor environment and times that we live in, yeah. Thank you, Arne, for going through that. And I really appreciate the questions and what you were saying, Philippe, actually is sort of anticipating what I wanted to say here, and Heidi too, which is that when you look at the colophon of this, it's signed with his Turton name, and that it's locating this within this kind of line of or collection of treasure. So I want to dig into that a little bit more and just talk about the 7-chapter prayer to Padmasambhava. But this is, if you look at this colophon, and there's the Umse, the ritual chant leader, Sonam Gyalpo, who's made this request. He's asking for a prayer. Sorry, I have to click. For some reason, it keeps saying I need to renew the session. So I'll say later.
Really? Sorry.
The Zoom was saying I had to renew it. So yeah. So what's he asking for? He wants something connected to this beloved text in the tradition, the 7-chapter prayer to Padmasambhava, and revealed as a treasure in the 14th century by the Turton Tuku Zangpo Drogpa. And I'm not completely familiar with his whole backstory, but I think he was related somehow also to King Trizon Detsen. I think he was an emanation of from that time. And I know that there's a whole kind of story about when he revealed these treasures, that this particular one was also passed on to and was part of the Northern Treasures tradition with Riggs and Gondon. I think there's a whole fascinating backstory there. I love the stories of Turtons, so I get really into it. But so I don't think we have time to go into it now, but it's worth, if you're interested, there's all kinds of interesting stuff that happens. But what is being asked here is something that's connected to this treasure that's revealed in the 14th century by this Turton. And Jomon Khyentse Wangpo, in the time, this is now the 19th century, and he's also a Turton, a master of multiple lineages. And so he composes this prayer, the fulfilling all wishes, describing it as a guru yoga connected with the main points of the 7-chapter prayer. So what does it mean for someone like Khyentse Wangpo to create a new composition and then position it as really being in a kind of intimate dialogue with a 500-year-old treasure text? So this Le Dunma, the 7-chapter prayer, as we've heard, we've heard quite a lot, we've heard what it is, but it follows Padmasambhava's activities through different lands, and there's biographical praise recounting his deeds, but the fact is it's long. It takes considerable time to recite the full version. And this became, by the 19th century, this is a famous text. We could talk also, we don't, maybe at another time, but why some texts achieve this status and others don't. But this text was, by the time we get to the 19th century, this is a very well-known, famous text. And so then Khyentse Wangpo is composing something that is connected with these main points. So when he responds to this request, he's anchoring it in the authority of the treasure, right? He's saying in this colophon that it's connected. He's not summarizing it. He's trying to present some kind of essential meaning that he's being, I think, very careful about lineage, about this is being located, and using the Turton name is like, I'm serving the transmission, right? I'm locating this within this treasure line, right? This stream that goes through. And I almost sort of see it like taking a really long symphony and creating a shorter arrangement that preserves the melodies and the harmonies. Because I think, and this is something that Philippe was saying too, and I really appreciated that you said this, which was about creating accessible practices. And that when you have these very, very long teachings, if a practice is very elaborate and is very long, it's really only full-time retreat practitioners that can do it. And it's hard to survive in a community of busy householders. And so it's creating a way of connecting with this in a way that is, I guess you could say, an elegant concentration for the time poor would be how I would try and describe it. And this is a sophisticated person requesting this too. This isn't a need for something easier, but something maybe more concentrated. And so you've got something that can be done in, I mean, I think we've seen Arne's just gone through it in, I don't know what, 15 minutes. Just even kind of reading through it and pulling apart a little bit. And that's not diminishing it. It's still complete. It's still potent. It still holds the blessings, and it is located within this treasure tradition. And So we've got the, like I have, you know, let's have this image of Kensei Wangpo on the 10th day of the 5th month in 1869, crafting these verses in response to a request made with divine flowers. He's not doing something convenient. It's an ongoing transmission and conversation across centuries. So he's in dialogue with Tukugzongpo in the 14th century, and he's in dialogue with Padmasambhava, and dialogue with practitioners who will use this in the future, including us, right here now. So it's not, it's not like a summarized diminishment. I see this as a vehicle for transmission across time. And I think this connects with what I was saying in the beginning about the treasure tradition being about practices that serve the needs of practitioners in a lot of changing circumstances. And so now we're participating in this lineage. And so I think there's, for me, there's confidence that, trust in Kensei Wangpo, that we're receiving this understanding in an elegant time for the ways that we live. Um, and I'll say that, that extends to actually this whole project of what we're doing, the translators, the editors, the practitioners, itself is a treasure. Like I see this as part of that treasure as well. And so I think I'm going to pause because I'd like to make some time for anyone to have comments, but that's kind of what I wanted to say so we don't go super, super over time. I see someone unmuted. No. Oh.
I guess everything was clear.
Wow.
You dispelled all doubts.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, somebody wrote in the chat, that's so beautifully said, Amelia. Yeah.
Thanks. We're just sitting in the treasure right now. We're all part of it. I will then say something to that Philippe said, which was, yeah, this other text that we've been working on, which I think has been published. It has, and Joan Kensei Wangpo wrote this when he was 14 years old, and that this trickiness about this locating this line about the Sindhu lake and what's actually happening there, and I just, the appreciation for trying to make this in a way that's ambiguous enough and also isn't confusing either, is such a puzzle piece, right? It's such a big part, and like it can go back and forth for a while before it makes it out into the world. So I have a lot of appreciation for that. I think there was one more thing in the chat, right? I thought I saw something else pop in the chat, but
Yeah,
maybe.
I thought so too, but that's maybe deleted, I don't know. Okay, maybe then we conclude. Or Amelia, did you want to say more sentences? No.
Oh, hang on, there's something here.
Also, no, I.
It's interesting. It says Guru Rinpoche's on an island forever. I know. So there is a paradox. Yeah, indeed, there's a lot of paradox. No, I feel like it's come to a conclusion. I've actually really appreciated the flow of how this has gone through. It's almost like we planned it.
Almost. Looks like.
Just like thank you, Arne, for hosting and Philippe for work and doing this together. And if we don't have questions, I'd love to dedicate the merit. I don't want to do it because
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
have it. I have it ready.
but it would be nice to do that. And if anyone was too shy and they want to ask other questions outside of this, just email us. We can be found easily on the KVP website. So
Yeah. Usually you have our first name and then at cancervision.org.
yeah.
Okay, then also my big thank you to both of you, Amelia and Philippe. Thank you also, Philippe, really for this wonderful translation. For me, it works in English. My Tibetan is not good enough and I have to rely on it. So it carries, I feel it carries the power and blessing what you created. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, thank you, Amelia, also for your Emma-ho-ish views and explorations.
I've never been described like that way before, but thanks.
No, I thought it fits so well to the first word, you know.
Yeah, Maho. Nice.
And then let's dedicate. By this merit, may all attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy of wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may all beings be free. Lord of the ocean of teachings in Tibet without bias, universal monarch of 7 wondrous transmissions, Jamin Khenpo Wangpo, Manjugosha in person, may all be auspicious for your lineage to spread and flourish. As long as space remains, as long as the world remains, may a true remain to elevate the suffering of the world. That's it. Thank you both. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Tongse Khenpo Rinpoche, for this project. Thank you, Jamin Khenpo Wangpo. Guru Rinpoche. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to see you all.
See you. Stay healthy and happy, everyone.